She thought it was just another ordinary day, filling her tank, minding her business. But in a single moment, kindness turned into something far bigger than she could have ever imagined. What started as a simple gesture would soon collide with fear, prejudice, and a truth many try to ignore. By the next morning, her quiet life would never be the same. Why did helping a stranger at the gas pump spark an unforgettable chain of events? And what did it reveal about the world we live in today? For Maya, life was simple. She worked long hours at a diner on the edge of town, saving every dollar she could to keep the lights on and food on the table. Most evenings she drove the same route home, stopping at the little gas station by the highway, a place that felt ordinary, even safe. But safety can be an illusion. On this night, a routine stop would place her at the center of something far bigger than herself. A chance encounter was waiting, one that would test not just her kindness, but her place in a world that didn't always see her the way it should. Maya swiped her card at the pump, the chill of the evening breeze brushing against her skin. She was exhausted from work, but there was a quiet peace in knowing the day was finally done. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed him, a man leaning against a motorcycle, the patches on his jacket unmistakable. Hell's Angels. For a moment her heart skipped. People whispered about men like him. Dangerous, untouchable, a group you didn't cross. He looked frustrated, glancing at his bike, then at the pump. She saw him pat his pockets, shaking his head. His card had been declined. Maya hesitated. A voice inside told her to mind her own business, to get in her car and leave. But another voice, the one her mother had raised her with, urged kindness. She walked over, offering a quiet smile. "I can cover it," she said softly. His eyes lifted, surprised, almost suspicious. Still, he nodded. She paid for his gas and drove away, thinking nothing more of it. But that small gesture would not stay small. The next morning, Maya opened her front door and froze. The street outside wasn't empty. Dozens of motorcycles lined the curb, engines rumbling low like thunder rolling in the distance. Men in leather jackets stood on her lawn, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her. The same emblem flashed on every chest. The Angels. Her pulse raced. Why were they here? She hadn't done anything wrong. Fear clawed at her throat as she thought of the stories she'd heard. Stories where encounters with men like these didn't end well for women who looked like her. She stepped back inside, her hands trembling. A knock rattled the door. Then another. Louder this time. "Maya!" a voice barked. How did they know her name? Every instinct told her not to open that door. But before she could decide, a neighbor peeked from behind their curtain, quickly pulling it shut again, unwilling to get involved. Alone, isolated, Maya pressed her back to the wall, listening to the sound of boots on her porch. Her mind spiraled. Were they here to intimidate her? To send a message? In her town, she had felt the sting of side glances, the subtle whispers that reminded her she didn't quite belong. But this was different. This was louder, visible, unavoidable. The knocking stopped. Silence fell. For a few seconds she dared to breathe, until a shadow shifted across her window. What did they want from her? And why did it feel like the simple act of helping a stranger had put her in a danger she could no longer escape? The door creaked as Maya slowly turned the handle, her palms slick with sweat. The moment it opened, the air outside felt heavier, thick with the growl of idling engines. A wall of leather vests and tattooed arms stood before her, and in the center, the man she had helped at the gas station. His eyes locked on hers, cold and unreadable. For a second, no one spoke. Then he stepped forward. "You," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut through the silence. "You the one who paid for my gas?" Her throat tightened. She nodded, barely. He smirked, but it wasn't kind. The men behind him laughed low, a sound that sent a shiver racing down her spine. "You think we needed your charity? You think you're better than us? The words hit her like a slap. She opened her mouth to explain. It was just kindness, nothing more. But before she could, another biker spat on the ground near her feet. "She don't belong here," he muttered, his tone dripping with venom. "People like her never do." Her chest burned. She had felt those words before, in whispered comments at the diner, in the looks she got when walking into stores. But never this loud, never this threatening. The group closed in, circling her porch, their presence suffocating. Every muscle in her body screamed to retreat, but she stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. She realized this wasn't just about gas. It wasn't about money. It was about power, about reminding her of her place. The leader leaned in, so close she could feel the heat of his breath. "Next time," he said, his voice low and steady, "keep your kindness to yourself." The crowd erupted in laughter as engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath her feet. Maya stood in the doorway, trembling, tears threatening to fall. Not from weakness, but from rage. In that instant she knew. This wasn't just her story. This was every story of being silenced, of being told she didn't belong, and the question that haunted her now was simple. How many more times would kindness cost her safety? When the roar of the engines finally faded, Maya sank against the doorframe, her body trembling from the weight of what had just happened. The bikers were gone, but their words lingered, louder than the sound of any motorcycle. It wasn't just about being mocked. It was about being reminded once again that in the eyes of some, she would never belong. She tried to carry on with her day, pretending life had returned to normal, but every glance from a stranger felt sharper. Every laugh in the distance felt heavier. Every shadow outside her window carried their presence. Fear had moved into her home. Yet underneath that fear, something else began to grow. Anger, because what happened to her wasn't an isolated moment. It was part of a bigger story, one written across generations. A story of people of color being told to stay in their place, even when all they offered was kindness. A story of small acts twisted into threats, of good intentions punished with cruelty. And Maya knew her silence would only feed it. So she chose to share her story, not for pity, but for truth. For the reminder that racism doesn't always wear a uniform or come with flashing lights. Sometimes, it arrives on roaring engines, laughing as it leaves you standing in the wreckage of your own peace. Her question still echoes, not just for her, but for all of us. How many more acts of kindness will be punished before change finally takes root? This is more than Maya's story. It's ours. And the choice is simple. Will we turn away and pretend it's just another incident? Or will we finally listen, finally act, and finally say enough?